Today, we are going to be talking about Blade Runner 2049, so stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. Everybody, I am here with Joel, that Porg Life Cunningham.
Porg. Oh, come on.
Porgs, dude.
You've got to attack me because of my porg dislike?
Yeah, dude. Hey, if you don't know what Porgs are, you probably can't see this, but that's a Porg.
He's that new Star Wars character that they're adding for the next Last Jedi
they're going to
film.
sell a bajillion of plush dolls.
That was the only element of the new trailer that I really didn't like. And it was immediately because I saw it and I was like, cash grab. That was exactly what I saw. Is he in other, I'm guessing he's in the...
This is his first time.
He's not in any other type of media?
He's in like some animated shorts that came out recently.
Oh, okay.
Preparing.
So it's kind of like C-3PO's red arm. Oh, you wondering how I got my red arm, aren't you?
No, I think we're going to find out. They're probably really intelligent.
Maybe Porg is like the Jedi Master.
They're like little Yodas.
He's like the new Yoda.
They're like penguin puffins.
Okay. Well, I could just tell from the way that they design. They never make like an ugly, little thing. It's always a really adorable little thing. But,
like a BB-8.
Yeah, like a BB-8. Exactly. I liked BB-8 though, because BB-8 fits with the droid
this
thing.
Might fit.
Maybe it fits.
Joel, who am I today?
Today, you are Matt, sits in his car at night and watches The Flash. Hey.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yes.
Yo, The Flash is back.
The Flash is back. We'll be talking about that probably in our Tube Talk episode.
Yes.
Coming up after this. But you were catching up on the first episode, which I have not had a chance to see.
Yes.
But I got big hopes based upon your impressions.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. It's like basically retconning all last season.
Absolutely. But why don't you tell more about the podcast?
Yeah, man. So what we do on the Real Review podcast is we approach...
drinking LaCroix.
Well, drinking LaCroix, yes. Yeah. We are unofficially sponsored by them. They don't pay us. In fact, we pay them to drink their beverages, but
it's worth it. It's
LaCroix
worth
people, if you're watching us, please send us LaCroix. We will drink them forever on air.
It's worth the cost.
Anyways,
the $4.99, whatever it is for
$4.99 for that.
Well, for the case.
Oh, okay, yeah, for the case, yes.
Not the individuals. So, that would be a little excessive.
So. The way that we break it down is we like to approach film review from kind of our different perspectives. And we got two semi-extremes on how we approach things.
Yes.
Joel, you were very analytical, critical, very in the details and nitpicky and maybe a little negative, where I am maybe a little bit more about how does it make me feel? Does it hit me in the feels? Does it make me feel like more emotional? Am I attached to this character more so? I'm potentially more emotionally unstable.
Mm-hmm.
And
good way of putting it, good cop, bad cop.
Yes.
Kind of how I see it.
Well, yeah, kind of, a little bit.
Not quite that way. But.
And that's kind of, so we kind of blend those two together, and that's what we get, the Real Review, and that's what we do.
Which, based upon our conversation earlier about the film we're talking about today, Blade Runner 2049, that actually might play a pretty big impact on our review for this one.
Yes, I kind of briefly mentioned something to you earlier.
We might be a little bit at odds in regards to certain aspects.
Yes.
So we'll be getting into that, though.
I'll probably get some hate mail, too. I'm excited.
Maybe. I mean, we don't get too much hate mail. But thankfully, our listeners are pretty friendly.
It's all good. But Joel.
Yes.
Why don't you tell everybody how they get connected with us?
Sure. I will definitely do that. So we've got our website, which is realviewmedia.com. You can check us out there. We're always posting really awesome stuff. And then additionally, we have our Facebook, which is facebook.com/realreviewmedia.
So true.
Yes. We have our Facebook. We have also our Twitter and our Instagram, which is both at Real Review Media. Love to connect with you on those. And then lastly, if you want to drop us a line, let us know what you think of the podcast. Yeah. Any thoughts for reviews or potential inquiries for different stuff we're going to be doing. You can send us an email, drop us a line at realreviewmedia@gmail.com.
Also, we recently revived our YouTube channel.
We did.
Yes.
Which, if you're watching this in video, you realize this.
Yes. You know what's actually really fun is I've been doing trailer reaction videos.
You've been doing a ton of trailer
I know.
Like every day you're doing like 3. I'm like, where are you finding the time for all these trailer reactions?
So there's an abandoned break room at my work.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I go in there. It's actually an abandoned office. I go in there, I lock the door, and I basically just sit there. And it only takes a couple minutes, and I'm just like, oh, that looks cool. And I react to the video. I recently dropped the one for the Last Jedi trailer.
Yeah.
That one gave me goosebumps, but not all of them do. Some of them do. And check out. We're going to post stuff on there, start doing some stuff, and
Absolutely.
I'm going to keep doing trailer reactions, getting some good responses from you guys.
Doing
so
those.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I have not done one yet. I don't think I will be, but we'll see.
It's okay.
Maybe one day. I'll find my own little vignette video that I can do for something like Joel tears apart blah, and I'll just sit there and I'll give like a 5-second tear apart of a film. How about that?
That's going viral.
It's going to go viral
immediately.
Very true. Yes.
Anyways, so let's dive right into this beast, because this week we are talking about Blade Runner 2049.
Oh yeah, one of the biggest releases of the year.
Yes, and very anticipated by a lot of people.
Correct.
Some people have been waiting for this for 35 years since the original came out. I haven't been alive that long.
I was going to say 32 years, but then I didn't see the film until I was probably 17 the first time when I saw it.
Yeah, I didn't see the first film until last week.
Yeah, but the thing was, the first time I saw the film, this is the kind of film that you definitely felt doesn't warrant a sequel. Like when they were originally releasing films during this era that, they're releasing the original Blade Runner, this wasn't an era where sequels were common.
Right.
There were certain types of films where you knew they were going to make sequels for them, like Bond and everything, but this was a type of film where it was like, this is a standalone sci-fi noir type film that's probably never going to see a sequel. But we live in an era now where everything and its brother is going to have a sequel.
Right.
So I'm already waiting for the Blade Runner reboot that inevitably is going to bring about.
If it makes money, they're going to do a sequel.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a second too, because I think the sequel might be up in the air for this guy, but we'll see. Mm-hmm. So just to give you a breakdown, if you're unfamiliar with it, this is the sequel to the original. So a young Blade Runner's discovery of a long-buried secret leads him to track down former Blade Runner Rick Deckard, who's been missing for 30 years, directed by Denis Villeneuve, written by Hampton Fancher and Michael Green. Actually, one of those guys worked on the original.
Yes, Hampton Fincher wrote the original.
And this stars...
wrote the main script and then had some rewrites.
Right, so we got Harrison Ford, obviously, and then we have Ryan Gosling, Dave Bautista, Robin Wright, Mark Arnold, Ana de Armas, who I actually really enjoyed, Vilma, and a number of other people as well.
She's not that important. She's just the
Jared Leto.
Yeah, Jared Leto's definitely in there. Sylvia Hoeks, I should say. Also.
Sylvia Hoeks.
Hoeks as Love.
She's a little bit intense.
Yeah, and then also Edward James almost makes his cameo appearance basically as Gaff.
I did like that.
Unfortunately, he didn't do his city speak quite as much as I was hoping. He was kind of known for that in the original with the city speak style, which is a language in the original that they'd kind of invented over time, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, he's had a lot. He's had 35 years to just be like, I'm done with that
I guess that's true. A lot has gone on, so I don't know if you had a chance to look into this. Is outside of the whole movie talk, but at some of the short films and additional content that they released to kind of explain the period between the first and the second film. So Denis Villeneuve, director, decided that he had to figure out, okay, well, what actually happened between this, 30-ish year period between the first film and the second film.
For sure.
And so he partnered with a couple famous directors and stuff like that to create a couple short films, as well as an animated short, which kind of talks about the blackout that's mentioned in 2049. So if you get a chance, they're interesting.
Okay.
They're cool to check out.
I'll have to check it out. I heard about them, but I never watched it.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. And they're short. They're each 11 to 12 minutes. So
let me break this down for you real quick, just so you understand where I'm coming from. I liked Blade Runner 2049. I didn't love it.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, I had just seen the original Blade Runner, the final cut, by the way, which a lot of people recommend.
Yes.
I saw that for the first time last week.
I have differing opinions, and we can talk a little bit about the different Blade Runner type
There's 5 different versions,
right.
you guys.
So you have the original theatrical cut, which was released based upon heavy studio, requests. So the voiceover was a big part of it. They wanted there to be more of an explanation for why different things are going on.
Right.
And then eventually you had all these different recuts that kind of came in, recolorizations and things like that.
Right.
And the final cut is this version without the voiceover. Ridley Scott, who's the director for the original, also inserted a random clip of a unicorn running.
It's not random. It's there to explain something that happened.
Right, but the footage is actually left over, I believe, from what I heard from Legend, the movie Legend. It's leftover footage. And so the original intent
they also had
the film, you can make arguments as to what the original... And I'm starting to wonder with some of this, we're getting way off the track of 2049. We'll eventually get back to it, but I'm starting to wonder if this is one of those cases where it's very similar to like what we had with the Star Wars and George Lucas, where you've kind of had a director with a vision that kind of at the original time created it, didn't realize maybe the impact or the grandness of what the impact was going to be.
Right.
And since then has had this kind of relationship of like, well, this is still mine.
Yeah.
And kind of over time tried to force little bits of things to go in there. It's kind of feeling like that to me, especially with the way that Ridley Scott has been making a lot of his films recently, which I have not enjoyed a great majority of the more recent films that he's released. But I don't know. I guess that's to be determined still a little bit. This is the final cut, though, thankfully, so it's not like he's going to be final cut. Final cut 2. That's not going to happen.
So, to give you my thoughts, and here's the thing: going into watching Blade Runner for the first time.
Well, and should we break this down with like spoilery, non-spoilery portions?
We'll do that. So non-spoilers right now. But the first Blade Runner is beloved by many in the film industry. And so I went in there thinking this is a masterpiece film.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if that ruined kind of my perception of it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was all right. I think the thing that was masterful about it was the filmmaking aspect of it. The script part of it is, I think, maybe what I had, and as far as the characterizations are concerned, I didn't feel connected to anybody in the original.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel that emotional pull. This is where our differences will come in, because I didn't feel like, even Harrison Ford's character, Rick Deckard, I was like, this guy's kind of a jerk and kind of like, abrupt and very kind of rough around the edges. I'm kind of like, there's nothing charming about him.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, whatever. I didn't really connect with anybody. Maybe Rachel, but that was really it. Maybe also Rutger Hauer's character a little bit. Yeah. But
so I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I argue,
totally get it.
I get there's definitely aspects to the original Blade Runner that are weaknesses. I don't think the film at all is perfect. It has its flaws. Mm-hmm. I think Harrison Ford's acting job was a little kind of off at times.
Sure.
There's definitely some choices. It definitely reeks of like that late 1970s, early 1980s kind of feel and vibe. But I would say as far as as far as the thematic elements, the decisions that were made visually with the lighting.
Oh, yeah. All that stuff,
the
like I said.
The complexity of the story. Yeah, it probably is up there. I'd say the only other film that you would say reached the same levels, the same heights of grandness, of impact would probably be like Stanley Kubrick's 2001 Space Odyssey, which is in and of itself as well a film that is very divisive for some people.
Yep.
This film, I think, has gotten a lot more critical, like a critical eye as of recent because of 2049.
Yep.
But I think if you look at it within the context of when it was released and what it did to sci-fi and kind of that whole genre, it really does stand the test of time as being sort of a perennial classic.
Yeah,
is what I would say. But there are weaknesses. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm not knocking the film at all. I think just for me, I didn't connect with it emotionally, and that's what I need in a movie to really feel connected to it. Like I said, all the filmmaking aspects, cinematography, the way the camera moved, the way the lighting was, the way the visual effects were in play. Yeah. Just the grittiness of the actual city, like at ground level.
Right.
I felt claustrophobic at times. Specifically, there's like a chase scene that Harrison Ford's chasing down one of the replicants.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's so congested. Stop. Like it was like claustrophobic for me.
Yeah.
But maybe we should get back to 2049.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we can summarize it to say that the original Blade Runner did have an amazing impact, was in a lot of ways a good film, but had limitations. I mean, there's actually you can actually go back and watch it. They used footage clips like during that chase scene, one of the guys dressed up as one of the human replicants they had a female girl dressed up as that replicant to break through like the glass. There's like moments where you can actually see stunt doubles.
Right.
So there's limitations in the film. It's not a perfect film by any means, but it's got a feel and a tone and a style that has been really had very big impacts.
For sure.
Yeah, let's get 2049.
Yeah, 2049.
All of our watchers and listeners are like,
yeah, hey guys, I like 2049 better. And I think the biggest strength for me going into this, let's talk about positives up front.
Yeah.
I connected emotionally with Ryan Gosling's character, Kay.
Okay. I was saying K to agree, and I was like, K.
Or Joe, whatever.
Yeah.
So I connected with him pretty early on, and a lot of it had to do with his interaction with Joy as well.
Mm-hmm.
I liked their chemistry, and and I can't really talk about a lot of stuff without it being spoilery.
Yeah.
But I thought the acting was really good. Again, first of all, we're talking about Denis Villeneuve. This guy has done like little to nothing wrong in his directorial
for the most part.
styles.
I mean, he's coming off of Arrival, which was amazing film.
Didn't he do Sicario also?
He did Sicario, which that was earlier. I'm just talking about the last film he was on was Arrival, which, a lot of awards.
He did Prisoners, which I loved Prisoners.
Yeah.
He's been doing a lot of good stuff. Then we have Roger Deakins on cinematography.
Which can't go wrong with.
Every single frame of this movie was beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. There was some stuff in there. I was like, man, how did they do this? And I guess I learned after the fact is a lot of the effects were practical. They had a lot of practical set pieces and stuff like that. And that was really, really cool. I thought the acting was really good. I actually thought Harrison Ford's acting in this was far better than what. Obviously, he's more tenured and he's wiser. He knows that. I thought it was better.
Yeah,
like it was more, had more depth.
Yeah,
he got more emotional across. I cared for his character in this movie more than I did in the first movie.
I would also say the weight of the entire film wasn't on him.
Yeah,
it was a lot easier for him to kind of relax into the character without having to go through all these different layers and nuances, because you're encountering him very briefly, and I'm not going to spoil how or when or where, but it's not very significant for the most part as to the impacts that he has to emotionally play on the other characters.
Right.
He's more of a character to bounce things off of.
Yeah.
But I do think he did a decent acting job.
Yeah.
He was more of just his standard Harrison Fordiness.
Yeah.
Just kind of grumpy old man Harrison Ford, which is fine.
Yeah.
So I didn't dislike him.
There was a shot, and it's not spoiling anything, but you see a dog walking.
Yeah.
It was entirely CG, but it looked so real and really, really cool.
Yeah.
I was like, that's awesome. There was just a lot of really, really cool visual things about this I really enjoyed. I connected with Ryan Gosling's character emotionally, even more so, like I said, Harrison Ford. Everybody I thought did a really, really good job. Even Dave Bautista, he's not known for those like kind of drawn, kind of reserved roles a little bit.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that part of it. So
I think what I got from this film was agreed. The visual style was very good and very awesome. I don't think the visual style in my mind was the same for me. They're going to win a bunch of awards probably for the cinematography for this. We'll see if Roger Deakins finally gets an Academy Award, because he never wins them. But he should. Yeah. But I will say that it didn't quite approach the same style of the original film at all. This film was a lot brighter in a lot of ways. I mean, there is a moodiness and an atmosphere to the environments, don't get me wrong, but I mean, the very first scene of the movie is, Ryan Gosling going out to this farm, basically, that's out in the middle of nowhere, an open environment with sunlight, and they're inside and there's shadows inside. But if you look at the original Blade Runner, and I will say this, I'm going to try to not approach this from the level of like, well, that's Blade Runner, that is so much better. I'm going to try and approach this from, its own standpoint. But I will say this, I really enjoyed the cinematic and visual style, the lighting, the mood, the atmosphere that was set by, the texture of the cinematography, if you will, from the original Blade Runner, and it wasn't present in this film. It was good cinematography. It was very impactful, very mood-inducing, had a very strong tone. You could even say maybe in a sense it was like an expansion of the world, but I didn't like it as much because it didn't elicit that same noir feeling, is what I would say. The noir tone was really hugely there because of the lighting and the cinematography of the original film. This film was much more for me, and I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just talking about generalities here of the film. This was more of a sci-fi mystery, whereas the original was more of a sci-fi noir. Yeah. It had that punkish type thing too going on with the leather and the neon lights, and everything felt dirty and raw and grimy. Yeah. There was a lot of rain. They spent I think pretty much all of this, all of the movie was basically spent in the city as well. Right. Whereas this film, very minimal amount of time. He's got a few interactions with Mackenzie Davis.
There wasn't a lot of ground level stuff.
A lot of it is in buildings or out in environments or kind of floating around and like looking at things. And that's just a difference. I'm not going to attack that yet and say that like, oh, that was horrible. They were going for something different.
Right.
And what I really was trying to say there, and I think I kind of briefly said, was it was an expansion of the Blade Runner universe. Now, do I think that was a good expansion? Was that a worthwhile expansion? that's where I'm a little like, yeah.
Well, what were your positives though?
So obviously, cinematic style. I thought the acting for the most part was really, really good, except for I didn't really like Jared Leto. It wasn't necessarily his fault. I think the role just didn't fit him as well as it should have. When you look at the original, main, Wallace versus Tyrell type comparison, I was expecting somebody that was a little bit more experienced. It almost had inklings of, I can't think of it, Batman versus Superman with Lex.
Really?
Yeah, it had inklings of that to me. It felt like a person trying to act up to an age instead of just being that age.
Oh, no.
Inklings of that. And I'm not saying he did anywhere near as
Jolly
bad
Rancher?
Yeah. I'm not saying he did anywhere near as bad of an acting job.
Eat it.
Because he was interesting.
Eat the Jolly Rancher.
Yeah, but there was also limitations. Well, we're talking about positive.
Yeah.
So I'll stick with the positives for now. So I do think that the acting, for the most part, was really good. And there was I really liked that they tried to set a mood. They didn't just, like with a lot of the shots, you're just kind of looking at environments, you're looking around, seeing different things. They're letting you absorb kind of the environment, and that does set a tone and a feel for a scene. And I think the action at times as well was very visceral.
Yeah.
Much more so than the original. There was a couple scenes of real strong violence. I mean,
the opening one
Tyrell
too
gets his eyes plucked out there.
Yeah.
Spoilers. But, there's just people getting really massacred a couple times here with a couple things. And it was almost borderline horror in some ways to me.
Oh, okay.
The way that it was just so strongly I don't want to spoil anything. We'll talk about that maybe more when we get to the spoiler talk.
I didn't get those vibes.
Yeah. So those are kind of my main positives.
Okay, I gotcha.
I mean, that does take you far. I'm able to forgive a lot when there is a strong visual style.
Yeah.
And Roger Deakins had a very strong visual style, and it really did emote a lot of things and a lot of feelings through that.
Okay, let me talk about my negatives.
Okay.
Too dang long.
Well, yeah.
This movie was
that's kind of the one, everybody's saying that.
Nearly 3 hours long.
Yeah.
It did not need to be 3 hours long. I know a lot of times they were probably milking, hey, let's get, a lot of this cityscape, and I appreciate a lot of that stuff, but it didn't need to be 2 hours and 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
The other thing was, and this is a spoiler, I'll talk about it later, is how Ryan Gosling's character arc, what took him, which I wasn't necessarily disappointed by, what happened.
Yeah.
But it hit me emotionally, and I'll talk about it. It hit me emotionally in a way I didn't want it to, because I felt like I was, on board. So, yeah, I would say length, emotionally, didn't like how I felt at the end.
Yeah.
I left kind of feeling, just down a little bit.
Yeah.
Just about stuff.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean it makes it a bad movie. Just for me, it didn't make me feel good.
Yeah.
I would say, let's see here. They kind of set it up for a potential third one.
Yeah.
With a lot of what Jared Leto's character is talking about. And don't want to spoil that either, but we'll get into that. And I don't know if I really feel like it needed to go there, but I feel like it might.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's it, I guess, as far as negatives. Not a ton of really negative things.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I would agree with length. Overall length was way too long. Yes and no.
Yeah.
I think what was lacking in the film that could have, and I will say this too, because we're breaking
Michael
down negatives
Bay,
now.
that's
Here.
what's lacking.
Yeah, it's Michael Bay. Yeah. I liked the film, but there was some very strong negatives in this one that I thought were negatives in comparison to Blade Runner, even though I'm not trying to compare it. I'm just using that as a jumping point. But I felt like thematically there wasn't as much nuance and as much to latch onto. It was much more just about the idea of humans versus replicants and a battle between them. Whereas the first film was much more, and there was elements for sure of this idea of being born versus, having memories implanted. Is there a soul? There was elements of that at play, but there was so much more depth to that with Harrison Ford, where he's not only talking about, what is real, what is human, what is not real, but he's also talking about what is meaning, what is purpose, why do we exist? Does it matter? Do we exist? The whole idea of, it's like it's like tears in the rain. Is like, what's the point if you can't even see it? It doesn't even matter. It's not even there. You're not even there. There was thematic elements that really were a driving force behind the story and the tone and the dialogue so often in the original Blade Runner that I really appreciated and I really liked, that I really didn't feel like there was so many times where the dialogue in this film was just so on the nose.
Okay.
You know, the example of Robin Wright, like, you stopped a war, like, you know what I mean? Like, she was just so like, you know, on the nose. The one thing that I really thought was cool and where it started to kind of get into like that nuance of deeper meaning and purpose was, and I don't think this is too spoilery, but that test that they do to the replicants where they kind of make them
it's
go
called
through
the,
a series of questions.
Voight comp or whatever.
Right,
like
to find out, you know, are you where you need to be,
right.
more or less. That's kind of where it got into that depth. And I kind of wish that it had kind of gone deeper with that. And I think another reason, and we've talked about this, is the idea that, you know, and this isn't, I don't believe this is a spoil, but Ryan Gosling is a replicant, you know?
Right.
The fact that he's a replicant, it makes it harder, I will say, and this is a personal issue that I have, it's harder for me to connect in with a character that I know is a robot because I feel like they're not real. And maybe that's just a personal issue. But I think as well, there was a lot of strange flatness to a lot of the acting and a lot of the characters at times where it was like, he's like, I never smile. I'm just always like, you know, and he even says that at one point, like, I never smile. But it's like, there's no reason that the other characters and the other replicants can't have an emotion. The thing that happened in the original Blade Runner, which was so awesome, was that they had emotion, but they just had weird emotion. They had like these heights of rage, or like, it was like they were unable to control it. There was like this insanity that was kind of built in because they were like these imperfect creatures. And I kind of like that. And it was also maybe partially because of, you know, they're living in this environment where it's so claustrophobic and everybody is, you know, forced to be mangled and the value of life has dropped so far.
And it's been 35 years though, too. The replicant technology is better.
I know, but it makes for boringness. And I would say the last thing that was kind of, besides Jared Leto, who I didn't necessarily think was the greatest in there, I didn't really get what his motive was. He was like creating these things because he wanted to create a bazillion more of them, but was it just to make more money? Was it just to be like this god guy? What exactly was he trying? It just wasn't clear enough to me.
I have a theory. We can talk about it.
We can talk about it. And he kind of mentions it and he talks a little bit, but he goes in this whole metaphor of like angels and gods, and it's almost like he's trying to play God, but then it all boils down to basically the idea that he just wants to create a bunch of replicants so that he can set up this mining universe. You know what I mean? So I'm spoiling. I apologize distinctly that I'm spoiling probably a bit, but it just kind of gave this general sense of just kind of like, everything was, it wasn't like as interesting. It wasn't as fun. I think if the theme aspects had been there stronger, it would have made those moments where you're just kind of, because the thing that those shots of just the city environment in the original Blade Runner did so well is that it got you into that sense of just like your smallness. You know, what is the purpose of it? What is, you know, congestion and being part of that milieu? So I really felt like that was kind of lost.
Okay, I gotcha.
In a lot of those scenes. So, but
well, you kind of felt different about some of these things.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I gotcha.
And I didn't always like, this is a minor gripe, but I didn't always like the direction that they took with some of like the horrific elements. There was a lot more nudity. There was a lot more horror. A lot more people dying very gruesomely. And it just felt like, there was people that died some pretty grisly deaths in the original, but consistently in this one, it was like, if they're going to go out, they're going to go out in a really grisly, really dark way. So, So,
no, I gotcha.
So, do you want to give rating?
Yeah, you give your rating, bro.
So, my rating for this is 82.
Really?
To B-, yeah.
Oh, okay. I kind of thought you'd be lower than that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, like I said, I overall like enjoyed the film.
Yeah.
I think because of one, namely, I'm a big fan of sci-fi. I'm not going to lie about that. There was some theme elements there that were cool. There was very awesome visual style.
Yeah.
And that saved a lot. Roger Deakins saved a lot from this film for me.
I'm at 87.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of that B+ area.
So maybe not as divergent.
Yeah.
As we thought.
But we can always, we'll always have the Book of Henry.
Let's not go there.
Okay. So we're going to go like this now. We're going to be, hey, spoilers coming up. We're going to go into spoilers. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers, we're going to dive deep into this.
Stop the video.
Real quick. Stop it.
Stop.
Don't watch any more video. Don't listen to any more podcasts.
Stop the podcast.
Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ryan Gosling dies.
He does die. Or he's taking the best nap ever.
Yes. He's having a coma.
He's having a wonderful coma-ish nap on the steps outside of the dream center.
I was bummed out about
center,
that.
The memory center, I should say.
So let me just say this.
Yeah.
Because
I was fine with him dying.
I know you said you couldn't connect with Ryan Gosling's character, but I did because I felt like he was like trying to be human. Like he was like, I felt like he was having these feelings and emotions. I felt that with his connection with Joy. And so I was like, I was kind of on board with him. He like loved her, and then she, she died.
That's where I was the most connected to him. Is when he lost Joy.
Yeah.
That was probably my saddest moment of the entire film.
Right.
I mean, that was really dark. I'm like, Joy.
Yeah.
She's such a. But that also begs the question. I mean, why didn't she just like back herself up to an external hard drive? He didn't only have to have one copy. He couldn't. Like, you can't make additional copies of this and send it to the cloud, or
I was super bummed out by that.
I mean, I've got my editing computer right over there, and I'm backing it up to like 5 different places right now.
Right. So the big twist in this movie is, our replicant Rachel had a baby, Deckard's kid. Right. So the thing with that is the whole time, and I knew this wasn't the case because they were telegraphing it. The whole beginning of the movie was.
It's kind of like a tension of will they, won't they, or he, isn't he?
They were telegraphing the fact that Ryan Gosling, was going to be the kid of Deckard and Rachel from the first Blade Runner. And that whole time I'm like, it's
too obvious.
I was like, they're making this really obvious. This can't be the right answer.
Yeah.
So the whole thing was Ryan Gosling's finding his purpose, like I felt like. And when somebody finds their purpose in something, especially in a show or in a movie, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
And so he's like finding this purpose, and then all of the air gets sucked out of it. The big twist is he's not the kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just felt devastated for him. I was like,
he definitely,
this is such a bummer.
Right, because he just lost Joy. Then he also found out he's not human.
And he has
or
like
whatever
no
that would be. It wouldn't be human. It would be a replicant baby. Yeah. Which they never, that's the reason I was having problems, is they never really explained certain aspects of what that would mean if you're like a baby of a replicant. They didn't really explain enough about how that works and what that means to me. There's one thing we do need to talk about. And that was the scene with Mackenzie Davis and Joy.
Oh, that was weird.
The lovemaking scene. That started off.
She was Black Mirror.
She's the winner. Yeah, not San Bernardino. Yeah,
San Bernardino.
I don't remember, but that's
Junipero.
Beside the point. Yeah, San Junipero. That scene started off kind of sweet. And it's like, she's doing what she can to make her boyfriend happy. Lover, whatever you want to call him. And then it got really weird, and it just kept going and going and going. And then the moment that it got really weird to me, and I kind of was like, ugh, was the part with the hands on the back of his head.
Oh, really?
And it turned into like The Ring or something, or like The Grudge, where you see like these intertwining double hands behind his head. Remember that?
I didn't find that weird.
That got super weird to me. And it was like, I got it, but I didn't. And then part of the thing to me that kind of, like, things were kind of left a little bit open. It didn't make sense to me.
Sure.
So when did Joy start telling him that he was special because he was born? You know what I mean? Because she's like saying, "See, I was always telling you that," and then that turned out to not be the case. So that kind of undid that. And then additionally, he's going back into the city.
Joy just loved him.
Yeah, but then he's going back into the Los Angeles city. And I thought that was a really cool scene, a very effective scene though, on the rooftop when she's experiencing rain for the first time. I thought that was cool.
I was trying to figure out at first, is she becoming real? What is happening?
This is where the whole characterizations and stuff in the relationship started to not make sense to me. Then she's like interacting with him when he's like walking into this Los Angeles, and she's the giant naked version of herself, which was, again, they had way too much nudity. I didn't need anywhere near as much nudity. The whole scene with like the birthing thing with Jared Leto was weird.
That reminded me of the Matrix.
And she calls him Joe. And so I'm like, so was all of this basically just programming? Like all of her love and her artificial stuff? So then it immediately cut out the whole depth of that relationship that she had once had.
Right.
Which it just kind of undid it. And then I thought as well, the final battle that he had with Love, who I thought out of all the I mean, she did some pretty gnarly stuff in that. The punch that she did to the poor, I can't think of his name, but the
mortician guy.
Yeah, when she's like, here, hold this, and she like, gosh. That's what I'm saying. It like took on horrific elements.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was one of the worst
broke his neck from the back, and he's like compressed. Yeah, it was just
he's just bleeding out of everywhere.
Exactly, his eyes are filling with blood and stuff.
Right.
It was so dark, and it was like it felt viscerally like, why are you going this extreme with it? I was kind of okay with it. I mean, it didn't give me that off-putting, but tonally, I don't know. It was just it was a bit odd because the film felt a lot, and this is where I was at with the lighting. The film felt a lot brighter. It felt a lot more open and full. And the original film, because it is so claustrophobic and it's so dark and shadowy, and there's lots of like rays of light shooting through things, it felt claustrophobic. It felt so it made sense when these dark, bad things were happening. But when you're in this environment where it's like, hey, we're just walking through the desert and stuff like that, which the Las Vegas stuff is kind of cool. And I thought the whole interaction he had with Harrison Ford was great when he finally first meets him and they just get in that fight. I thought that fight was really fun, and the fact that he just kept punching him and he's like,
okay, you want to get a drink? Okay, let's get a drink.
I thought that was really cool too. But yeah, I don't know. There was just elements to that really made the tone feel, because of that cinematography, not feel quite as interesting to me.
Right. And I think the reason why it felt brighter is because
it felt more modern. Whereas the first one revolutionized.
It's modern, though. I mean, it's 35 years later.
I know, but the first film revolutionized what that look was and that feel was.
We have a lot less neon in our day now than there was 35 years ago.
I know, but it's a different universe.
Okay, whatever. But yeah.
I'm not angry at you, man.
The Las Vegas stuff was cool. I did really enjoy that. I forgot about that. All that stuff was.
I wasn't
cool.
sure where they were, and then all of a sudden I saw the two like naked girls like leaning against. I was like, okay, Las Vegas. Like,
well, I thought they passed the Luxor hotel that like pyramid.
Yeah, somebody pointed that out too, and I didn't actually see that. I
thought that I was like, oh, that's the Luxor. Is this kind of like upgraded or something?
Yeah.
Anyways,
and Lenny James made a cool cameo. I was like, oh, it's like a Walking Dead, outside of Walking Dead.
Oh, that's right.
He was a really dark kind of.
He was kind of like when he was doing the Clear stuff, like kind of crazy a little bit, but he was also like running like a child labor camp or something.
Right, and that really went nowhere. I was kind of hoping that he would get killed or something like that, but that's kind of an element that, like you said, they might be expanding, because they definitely are expanding the world. They're going to Las Vegas, they're going there, they're going out to the ocean, they're going to all these different buildings and stuff. So they definitely, whereas the first film took place in like maybe like 5 different environments.
So the last thing I was thinking about was they're setting this up. First of all, this movie did terribly and underwhelmed at the box office.
We can talk about that a little.
And I felt like they were setting up, especially what Jared Leto was doing, and this is what my take was on what he was doing, is he was trying to create a replicant army to eventually just take over, and there to be only replicants and, primarily basically take over and get rid of people.
Possibly.
That was kind of my thought. And so
possibly.
And then you
I'm not disagreeing with you.
The people that met with Kay or Ryan Gosling, that lady who's saying, oh, you're not the son of Rick Deckard, you're not as a girl. They made it seem like too, we're getting together our replicants, people for like an uprising, and that's kind of where I felt like maybe they were going to try and push it into like another thing. And I'm glad they didn't overemphasize that, because this movie didn't need to be setting up a franchise,
Yeah.
But I felt like it could go there.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of torn on that. I was like, I don't know.
I didn't need that much depth to his character unless I understood why it was there. Why, and maybe that's part of maybe there's like an extended universe thing. I didn't get like what his motivation really was. If that's what it was, if he's trying to set up a universe, like an army to take over the universe with, why? Like, he's got everything.
Reasons, bro.
Right. Like, has he got a god complex? I mean, I need some sort of breakdown. I need like Robin Wright, who I felt was way underutilized in the script. I will say that as well. Yeah. She literally was so one tone. She was basically like, we need to stop this. We need to find this child and kill it because reasons, and don't get out of line. You know what I mean? Like, she could have been that voice of like reason, that bringing of, Ryan Gosling's character off the ledge, of like that she pushes him in the right direction at the right time. But instead she just came across as like the aggressive manager boss person.
Right.
And then died.
Yeah.
So, and she got it pretty grisly too. Yeah, not anywhere near as bad as the poor, guy that
just because love was involved with that one.
But overall I liked everything. I thought, I really liked Mackenzie Davis in this too. I'm a big fan of hers.
Yeah,
I like to see her in different stuff. Although the whole connection point that she had to that like underground resistance thing was a bit strange to me. And again, it was all just kind of like, all right, well, I don't really get the point, but okay. So,
well, hey, any other thoughts though on this?
No, I think that's it. I mean, there's a lot more I could say, but I don't want to go too far over. We've been talking for a while now. So you
got a good history of Blade Runners, everybody. Just to kind of recap, so that'll bring us to our end of our Blade Runner 2049 review. But to recap, make sure you visit us, check us out on all of our sessions, places, social media, facebook.com/realreviewmedia, Twitter and Instagram @realreviewmedia, youtube.com/therealreview, realreviewmedia @gmail.com. Reach out to us, send us an email, go to our website, and all that stuff is there. It's actually connected, updated at our website at realreviewmedia.com.
Yes, sir.
So check it out. And anything else, Joel?
I think I'm good.
Hey, well, I'm good too. And you keep it classy and keep it real.
It's been real.
It's been real.